On this episode of One Man, One Hand, and No Real Plan, I skin a passenger. So what I'm doing is grinding this because the sheet metal is just folded over there and then sandwiches this door structure. And that's pretty much how every skin is installed on every vehicle. I'm just grinding the edge down until this piece that's right there comes off, like this one. And I'm gonna go short of where I think it actually attaches and cut it off up here just to give myself some room in case it's not as long as I thought, and I'll just trim to where it goes. But this, I wanted to show you what I was doing. There's really not a plug weld anywhere that's going to interfere with what I'm working on. So all I've got to do is get this edge off and then make a cut across the front. Now you can see we've got that all, that skin out of the way. I'm going to clean some of this up and prime it since we can get to it now. And I think before I put the old one, there was some stuff right here, kind of a, not really rubber, but like a tarry type of noise isolator that you can see a little bit of remnants of it right there. But I think I'm going to put some foam in there, and then I'm going to sound deaden the top and bottom above it. But for now, I'm just going to put a little sticky foam there to help when I get it all put together. To get you caught up, after I got it primered and put back on and it was dry, I went ahead and checked it, and I needed to cut about, I think that's this way, a little bit more out of the sheet to get it to where it was ready to sit. And I'm glad I cut it long, or left it long, because it actually goes up and touches the bottom of this, and this gives me a little bit of a room to tuck that little setback in. So I've got that, and I got everything primered. I also cut out the hole. You can remember that the panel didn't have a hole for this hinge. I went up to like 10.5 and to 12, and I cut a little gap, and it's roughly an inch deep on the thing, but I started at 3/4 of an inch, and then I just worked my way out so that it was as tight as possible. And you'll see that here in a second. Set that on there. You can see that I worked my way out to it to make it as tight of a cut as I could possibly get away with on there, so that it would be as neat as possible. I'm going to go ahead and try and fit this, but I think I'll probably end up trimming just this, about the width of my pinky right there, because there is no way to get underneath that part. So if I cut it that much, I can tuck and still pinch it up here, but it makes it a lot easier to fit it that way, because this needs to go under to fit. So I've got it all clamped down, And I put a small stack of wood underneath here to put a light pressure here, and I got magnets holding it up. I think I'm ready to tack a couple of spots and check everything out. And I keep moving the bead along the whole path, keeping the heat really low. You can see I'm trying very hard not to get it, and it's not, I don't want it hot. I just want that as little a heat as possible as I go. But the same thing's true when you're grinding. When you sand this down, you don't want to generate heat. You need to always be moving, or you'll end up warping your panel. So just a word of caution. So one of the things when you put a panel on is it's designed to be folded over, and there's many ways you can do it. There's fancy specialty pliers and stuff, as well as just a hammer and dolly. And I use kind of a combination of those to make it happen, because honestly I don't have the fancy pliers, although I've considered making them. But I'm just going to hammer. I don't have it completely flat right now. It's just been put over to kind of trap it while I've been working on it. But I'm going to work my way around to make it all nice and flat and neat. Now I use clamps to get it as snug. I don't want any gap in there, so when it's folded over, it's as flat and as tight as it can be. Some people can get away without that. I obviously can't hold it and hammer and keep everything in check. So that's what I do to try and keep the skin in place to hammer it down. And I'm not trying to knock it flat as I go. It's just a little at a time with just light hammer blows to try and make it nice and flush and smooth. Eventually it'll be flattened all the way across there, but it's going to take me 4 or 5 passes probably to get it down. And when you get done with the seam, you have a nice tight clamping force on it to where it holds it in place. But eventually, after you get done doing it over and over and over again, you end up with this result. I've got it scrubbed down, and it's not perfect. Like, I'm gonna have to put a skim coat over the top of it. This ain't Project Binky, but I am gonna, it's nice and pretty well flush, and eventually it'll get a skim coat of filler, but for now, I'm just gonna prime this. These are hog ring pliers that I'm using to crimp, and they work good. exhaust here. It's about 30, I'd call it 3/8. I go down here to this section of the door, 31.5. Right about here, I'm at 32 and maybe an 8. And then at the bottom, it gets to 32 and 3/8 maybe. 32 and 3/8 is what I'd call that. So it's getting progressively wider. You know, I go from 30 and some change to 32 and some change as it goes down. Oh no, I kicked the bucket. My goal with stacking wood on the bucket to support the door was to get it to the right height for this matchup and these lined up. Now we've got the front and the back is pretty close. You know, if you push in just a little bit, I think they're the right height. What I'm going to do with these old bolt holes for the hinges is I think I'm just going to weld them in and grind them solid rather than try and take out the nuts that I had previously welded in. And then that'll give me a nice easy surface to figure out wherever I need to go to grill them, or to drill and set the new nuts. But I think that'll be the easiest way to deal with them. Obviously, I find it very hard to hold a punch and set it, so I have this guy, which a lot of people have, but when you push on it, it actually spring loads and puts a nice hole. And I usually do a couple when I'm really trying to. This is called a welding finger, and it just helps you hold stuff in place. And I love this thing. So I've got a clearance issue, and I think the only way around it is to trim just a little bit out of this. You can see I've got a gap in through here, but right here, like, it's hitting. So I managed to take this trim piece off. All this panel did in this groove, this groove right here, the part that's raised, is it held a piece of canvas that went around as weather stripping all the way around the door. And so I don't think I'm going to use canvas again, and I probably will just attach some rubber weather stripping or something. I don't know. That's another bridge for another day. You can see that we have a gap now in between the door, and it runs the whole way through. So now we do have a little bit. When you get to the top here, it's rubbing a little bit right there, and this trim piece is hitting just like it was on the roll bar there. Now you can see that I'm lining up. My profile's nice. And nothing is done on the back of the cab. Not a lick has been adjusted, but by just working on it. There's still, I got to bring the back of the cab at the bottom in more, but I haven't done anything to align it this way. So I'm pretty excited that it's working pretty good there. So after many hours, I ended up taking the bottom cab corner patch off that was on it originally on the passenger side as well, because it just wasn't sitting right when you set everything together with the door. But I finally got this door shutting without a monster gap. There's a little bit on the top yet, but I've got everything lined up and down, and that looks a little closer than what it actually is. But it's not, this seam is just not perfect. You can see this right there. When this comes down and sits on it, it's like it's supposed to, then this gap will be exactly, because it's literally like, oh, about the width of my finger, not quite. And then if you put that in there, it'll be perfect across there. I just need to pull that down. I just haven't yet. So I think we're gonna call this video a wrap. If you've liked what I've done on this one, please feel free to subscribe or even hit that like button. I'd really appreciate you guys taking the time to watch it, especially this super long one. And the next one, hopefully we'll get more of the cab finished up, because I really feel like once we get the cab done, then we're actually going to be able to make some significant progress towards making a running and driving vehicle.